in the Visayas regions. Okay, so religious festivals have been a part of the Filipino culture, especially in the Visayas. So these have become part of annual traditions where people from all walks of life participate or celebrate. So the ongoing pandemic, however, has introduced changes to the way people live and interact. So this includes the celebration of religious festivals. So in this presentation, I will be providing the local experiences and responses with regards to the celebration of religious festivals. Okay, the methods that I've used in acquiring data for this presentation is that I interviewed my own students as respondents for the Sinulog group. And of course, I also interviewed people who has experienced the Dinagyang and Ati-Atihan festivals or are from the place of the festivals. The questions that I've asked them are the following. How do you usually celebrate religious festivals, the Sinulog, Dinagyang, or Ati-Atihan? And with the pandemic still happening, what do you feel when you cannot celebrate the annual religious festival next year? So the respondents, when for the virtual interview, I did that with my online classes through Zoom, as you can see in the left side here, and also did a personal interview physically with a graduate of our school who is studying in UP Visayas in Miagao, Iloilo. He's a graduating student taking up BS chemistry, so he has been in Iloilo, but for the pandemic, he is living in our compound. So we are neighbors with this person that I have interviewed. Okay. So as I've said, the respondents for the interview are my students in Christology in college. So these are my re-ed students. And of course, through a roundtable discussion, I gathered their experiences and responses about the Sinulog Festival. And for the Dinagyang and Ati-Atihan festivals, I interviewed, as I have said, a graduate of our school who is presently enrolled in UP Visayas Miagao Iloilo campus. And he was also the one responsible for connecting me to his colleagues residing in Aklan and Iloilo. Okay, so the school setting, the location of this is where I teach right now. So De La Salle Andres Soriano Memorial College. So to give you a background of the respondents, so this is a mining complex. So our school is a member of De La Salle Philippines. So it's a non-stock, non-profit corporation located inside the Carmen Copper Corporation compound. So if you see at the back of this picture here, this is the mining pit. And this is our school, and this is where I live in the above the trees here. And this is located in Barangay Don Andres Soriano, Toledo City, Cebu. So to give you a glimpse, it is here, northwest side or the side of Cebu, facing San Carlos City, Negros Occidental. So this is where the respondents I have asked. Okay. Now to answer the questions and to give us some responses from the respondents regarding their local experiences and responses, these are some of this. I just give you a verbatim of what they have said. So one of the respondents was a non-Catholic. She said that since I'm not a Roman Catholic, I just go to the streets and watch the street dancing or go inside malls. Another is they said attend a mass and eat afterwards, and if time permits, a little stroll around the city. And most of these responses are towards a religious activity, attending mass, attending a novena, and then lighting a candle or managkot, as this one here. There is also another answer from respond or an experience that whenever the Sinulog Festival is being celebrated, she goes to the city to watch out for celebrities, or as she said, mag-atang og artista sir. Mag-atang dito sa dan kung may artista mo agi. Kung mahimo mapapicture. So that's how her experience with the Sinulog Festival. Okay, so go to the church. So attend the foot procession. So those were some of the local experiences for the Sinulog Festival. Now for the responses regarding how the Sinulog Festival will be celebrated in this time of pandemic, when the guidelines already being given, most of them answered sad and disappointed. So, but some said that it's still okay, but since I am not a Roman Catholic, or I'm and also another here, it's okay for me. I can still pray to the Santo Niño inside our house. One particular student answered that I feel empty that I cannot celebrate the annual religious festival. Okay, I feel so sad. It's okay for me since I am not fond of crowded places and so on. So these are some of the things that they have presented, or they have given answers that they have given to me when how do they what do they feel when they about to, what do they feel about celebrating the religious festival next year in this time of pandemic, right? Next, we have the Ati-Atihan Festival. So I interviewed a local teacher in a teacher from DepEd there, and he said that I usually go to the church and have pae-apak. Okay, forgive me if I mispronounce it wrongly. Pae-apak, according to him, is like a ritual when you go to the station, the side of the church in Aklan, where the Ati-Atihan is being celebrated, and then you are being massaged with a small statue of the Santo Niño, and then you are also asked to kiss the image. So that's like a devotion of their devotion to the Santo Niño in Aklan. So that is how he described it. I usually go to the church and have pae-apak during the Ati-Atihan Festival. Another thing that when I asked about their what they do experience is that they watch out for the candidates of Mutya, Sangkalibo, Ati-Atihan. So it's not it's a typical not what we expect that for a religious festival, but they said that yeah, we watch out for that. Also, together with my friends, I would go to the streets and take pictures with the Gigantes, and of course watch the street dancing of the different tribes. So those are the common answers that they gave with regards to the Ati-Atihan Festival experience. Now for the responses, one said that I don't usually go and participate in the activities. And another said is that I feel sad because the joyful celebrations are canceled due to the pandemic. So those are the responses towards the Ati-Atihan Festival, the ones that I interviewed from Aklan. And I feel disappointed as well because I always look forward to the celebration. Now for the Dinagyang Festival, this is the one I interviewed, the student that I personally interviewed. So just like in Cebu, I am not fond of going out to the streets during the Dinagyang. I only sleep in my dorm. So that's a experience. And I usually watch the street dancing from afar. I don't like to blend in with a crowd. And the ones that he referred me to answer that they also attend street parties. But for the response, it's okay for me since I am in Cebu right now because of the pandemic. So, and another said that it will not be the same as usual. So these are the experiences and responses in relation to the Dinagyang Festival in Iloilo. Now for the similarities in the local experiences and responses, both or all the three groups that give answers are they feel sad and disappointed because they are not able to celebrate the festival physically. And at the same time, they are okay with it because they understand the situation. So they feel sad and disappointed, and at the same time, they are okay because they understand the situation because of the pandemic. And the differences are, if with the local experiences that they gave, is that from the Sinulog group that I interviewed, the prevailing experiences that they gave are mostly religious activities, going to church, attending novenas, attending the procession, and then lighting a candle, managkot, and such. But for the Dinagyang and Atihan groups, these are predominantly more on the non-religious activities, street dancing, street parties, and as such. And this is also verified by the one that I interviewed, and she said that I have already experienced all three, sir. And then with the comparison, I can say that the Dinagyang Hati-Hatihan, from his experience that he provided me, is that it's a bit different when it comes to the Sinulog in Cebu. Okay, that's the differences. Now, for our conclusion, with regard to the presentation that I have, is that the respondents or the local experiences and responses of my respondents said that they feel incomplete because they are not able to celebrate physically the religious festival. Since it has been a part of their tradition, it is somehow creating a gap inside them. And it's like they feel empty. As one student said, they feel empty. They feel something is lost, or they feel something, they feel incomplete when it's like a checklist or a bucket list every year. One student of mine even said that during Christmas time, she saves money just to spend it for the next month's celebration of the Fiesta Señor. But with the pandemic right now, she feels a bit sad, but at the same time happy because the money that she has been saving will be used for another reason or for another thing. And of course, the pandemic has caused a reaction to the usual ways in celebrating the religious festivals. And lastly, with or without the pandemic, there is still the option to celebrate even though they are not there physically. So so these are the stats that I got from the interviews that I got. So the pray, managkot, like go to church and attend mass is mostly the largest share of the things here, for 54%, and then celebrate is next, which means that they celebrate the festival, they go to the street parties at the same time they also attend the religious activities. Okay, so that's 35%. And then for the responses here, the biggest share is the ones who said that they are sad and because of they are not able to celebrate it physically. All right, so with that, all that information I have given, I end my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Right. Thank you very much, Sir Deal Kodal-Kiper, for that very brief yet comprehensive presentation. Now, for the audience who have questions, I hope you reserve them during our open forum. We still have 2 more presenters left. So without further ado, I'll introduce the next speaker. He is, he is Mr. Reynan Gatbunton Melendres, and Ryan. Sorry, Sir Ryan. Sir Ryan Gatbunton Melendres. He is an assistant professor 7 at the University of the Philippines Diliman Extension Program in Pampanga. He earned his bachelor's degree in psychology, magna cum laude, in UP Pampanga. He finished his master's in archaeology in UP Diliman's Archaeological Studies program. Currently, he is a PhD in archaeology candidate in UP Diliman's Archaeology Studies programs. His research interests include Philippine archaeology, ceramic ethnoarchaeology, Southeast Asian and Philippine pottery studies, and heritage management. So let's welcome our third speaker, Sir Reynan Melendres.
Good afternoon, everybody. The title of my presentation is Kumprahan, Tabuan, ug Bailoan, Pottery Economics in Bohol, Philippines before and during a pandemic. I am also dedicating this presentation to Manang Alog, the one beside me in this slide, of Canduao Occidental. She was a cooking pot maker in Valencia, Bohol, and she passed away this year. I believe everybody knows the location of Bohol. So from 2017 to 2018, there are still 4 villages in Bohol that makes traditional pottery. These are the villages of Bagakay in Talibon, Binugawan in Calape, Canduao Occidental in Valencia, and East Poblacion in Albuquerque. In all of these villages, ceramics are handmade, where Boholano potters use only mats, wood blocks, or banana leaves for rotational devices and pot holders, small bottles for burnishing, fishnet or dry banana leaves for polishing, and wooden paddles, bamboo stick, and stone anvils for shaping. They do not use potter's wheel. The pots are all open-fired using only locally sourced fuel such as coconut leaves, stem and nuts, rice, hay, and wood. Everything is handmade and labor of love. This paper will identify the different distribution mechanism employed by Boholano potters. Specifically, it will discuss the prevalence of unique systems of marketing and circulating their ceramics to pottery users and consumers. That include gifting, kumprahan or pottery selling, tabuan or market day selling, suroy-suroy or itinerant vending, and bailo or bailoan or barter. Also, it will present the general state of the pottery making and economics in Bohol during the COVID-19 pandemic. This study utilized ethnoarchaeology as a research strategy. Ethnoarchaeology is defined as the ethnographic study of living cultures for archaeological perspective and archaeological interpretation. It means it is studying the present to understand the past. Specifically, I employed the following research methods for this particular study. In participant observation, I observed the potters and joined in some of their activities or champ opératoire, such as mining clay and temper, forming the vessel, and my favorite, selling pots in the market. For the survey and interviews, I used a modified version of Owen Rye's pottery technology data sheet and checklist. I used the local language and dialect of the potters with the help of local research assistants. With consent from potters, I took thousands of photographs and recorded hours of videos, especially in documenting the champ opératoire of pottery making in each of the pottery villages in Bohol. I also asked I also asked potters from each village to demonstrate to us how they make pots from start to finish. We also collected clay, temper, paint, and pottery samples from all the pottery villages to be analyzed later on. The identification of the minerals, rock fragments, and organic material in tempers and clay was done through thin section petrography in UP Diliman's Archaeological Studies program. Please do note that these pottery census that I'll be presenting were collected in 2018. The first village that I visited is Bagakay, Talibon. In this community, there are 12 households that makes traditional pottery. There are 23 active potters in this village, wherein 10 are males and 13 are females. The second community that I visited in Bohol is Binugawan, Calape. In here, there are 25 households that manufacture indigenous pottery. I'm sorry, there are 12 households that makes indigenous pottery. There are a total of 25 active potters, where 7 are males and 18 are females. Third community that I visited in Bohol is Canduao, Valencia. This place has the most number of household and potters in Bohol that makes traditional pottery, with 37 households and 66 active potters, where 29 are males and 37 are females. This is also where I met the oldest potter of Bohol. She is 98 years old. And I also met in Valencia the youngest one. He's actually a 9-year-old boy who knows how to make flower pots or kaang and clay stoves or sugang. The last pottery village that I visited in Bohol is East Poblacion in Albuquerque. The pottery making tradition in this village is imperial because there are only 5 households that makes local or indigenous pottery, wherein there are 5 female potters and 1 remaining male potter. For this research, I defined pottery economics as how do potters distribute and circulate their crafts, and in this case, pottery, to pottery consumers and users. The first unique traditional distribution system in Bohol is gifting or pagbigay ng regalo o hatag. Boholano potters are very generous. They give pots as gifts to their friends, relatives, and acquaintances. In this photo, Manang Jeline gave me a clay steamer as a gift. In all of the pottery communities that I visited in Bohol, pots are given as gifts in exchange for the fuel that they need in firing their pots. They give cooking pots, clay stoves, and sometimes even water jars in exchange for the coconut leaves and nuts, rice hay, and wood that they need. All Boholano potters are accepting orders from new customers, store owners, and their regular customers or suki. They normally use striped banana trunks to protect the pots from breaking when being transported or delivered. They hire a tricycle or small pedicab to deliver their wares to nearby places. They also ask bus and jeepney drivers to deliver them to more distant towns wherein the customer will have to wait for the bus or jeepney to arrive in a pre-arranged location. People from nearby islands of Talibon also order cooking pots and stove from Talibon potters. The potters deliver their products in the port of Talibon and are loaded to boats. And this is a sight to be seen. It's really beautiful. Potters prefer this particular distribution system because they're assured that what they will make will be bought and paid for, and sometimes in advance. All of the traditional potters sell their products to pottery resellers or comprador. A comprador is sometimes a potter himself or herself, such as in the case of 5 potters of Talibon, Calape, and Albuquerque. In some cases, the comprador is not even from the pottery village, such as in the case of these 2 men in the slide. You know, what is interesting in these photos is that the compradors are selling clay pots with metal pots and plastic wares. Please look at the photos. A lot of potters of Bohol sell their products during market days or tabo or tabuan in their own towns and in nearby towns. On the left are Manang Perla and her daughter selling pots in front of the church of Talibon. The market day in Talibon is every Sunday. On the right are the potters of Calape selling their potteries on their market day, which is every Wednesday. This is Manong Tangkoy of Canduao Occidental, Valencia. He is one of the best water jar or banga maker of Bohol. He is selling his pots during the market day in the nearby town of Dimiao, which is every Thursday. In 2018, of the 6 remaining traditional potters of Albuquerque, Manang Karing is the only one that sells her pot during the market day in Albuquerque every Wednesday, in Dawis every Sunday, in Loway every Friday, and Tagbilaran City every Tuesday and or Friday. In Suroy-Suroy, a group of potters go around villages and towns to sell their pots. In these photos, you'll see potters of Valencia, Bohol carrying their clay stoves on their backs using a long bamboo. Suroy-Suroy is also the way they conduct barter or bailo or bailoan, which is another distribution system in Bohol. In Valencia, Bohol, the production of pots, especially clay stoves, increases before harvest seasons and before fiestas because they barter their pots for rice by walking around villages and towns. In Talibon, Calape, and Albuquerque, suroy-suroy or itinerant selling is no longer being practiced. The ages and health conditions of the potters in these villages are the main reasons why they cannot do it anymore. The most interesting distribution system in Bohol is bailo or bailoan or barter. I was very fortunate that when I was conducting my research in Valencia, Bohol, 2 potters were about to conduct barter trips to Ubay and Kandihay. They will be exchanging their clay pots, mainly clay stoves, for unhusked rice or palay. The potters of Valencia exchanged their pots in the towns of Sierra Bullones, Mabini, Ubay, Valencia, Garcia Hernandez, and many others. These are towns with a lot of rice fields. There are no rice fields in Canduao Occidental because it is hilly and it's already near the beach or the sea. What is interesting to note is that at least 5 households in Canduao Occidental only makes pots before the Bailoan season. They only make clay stoves mainly to barter for rice. I'm supposed to join barter trip this year, but unfortunately, the pandemic happened. For Valencia potters, 1 clay stove is exchanged for 5 ganta, which is around 10 kilos of unhusked rice or palay. 1 clay stove can also be exchanged for 3 ganta of corn or maize. Some potters are exchanging 1 banga or water jar for 1 sack of palay or 50 kilos of unhusked rice. Manang Perla of Talibon before the pandemic used to exchange her pots for fresh and dried fish, shellfish, and other marine resources from the people of the nearby towns and nearby islands of Talibon. However, unlike in Valencia, the exchange rate is based on our modern monetary system, meaning if a clay stove or sugang is worth 150 pesos, it will be exchanged with dried fish that is worth the same. Barter trips are being done by potters of Calapet 20 years ago and by Albuquerque potters 10 years ago. They told me they used to exchange pots for rice, corn, bananas, taro or gabi, kamote, and marine resources like fresh and dried fish, shellfishes, and other marine resources. Again, old age and health conditions are the reason why they do not do these barter trips anymore. This year, my project entitled Bohol Ethnoarchaeology Project, Pottery Making in the Time of a Pandemic, was approved for funding by the University of the Philippines. Next year, I will be able to continue my work in Bohol, and with God graces, I hope meron na rin pong COVID vaccine, I will be able to visit Bohol again. For now, my preliminary data are from my research assistants in Talibon, Calape, Valencia, and Albuquerque. Amidst the pandemic, all the households in Talibon that we recorded in 2018 are still making pots. Flower pots or kaang are in demand nowadays in Talibon kasi po daw marami ngayong naging plantito at plantita dahil sa pandemic at sa quarantine. Selling pots during the market days has changed from almost every week to once or twice a month para nga po hindi sila mahawaan. Even with COVID-19, all the households in Calape that we recorded in 2018 are still making pots. Additional 10 households returned to making pots this year due to an increase in demand for flower pots. Selling pots during the market day is being discouraged. That is why the Calape potters prefer kumprahan, order or request, and pottery delivery. Pottery making in Valencia, Bohol is just the same before and during the pandemic. However, there is an increased demand for flower pots. Some of the children of the potters, because of the quarantine, started to make pots, especially flower pots. And that is a good news. Bailoan and Tabuan continued even during this pandemic in Valencia. And finally, amidst the pandemic, all the remaining pottery households in Albuquerque are still making pots. Flower pots or kaang are in demand, just like in the other pottery communities in Bohol. Selling pots during the market day is rare. They prefer kumprahan, special orders, and delivery. This pottery village is very famous this village is also famous for its traditional salt making. Kaya lang po, salt making pots are not being made from August up to now because the lone traditional salt maker in the community stopped their operations because of the pandemic. Concluding remarks. Pottery making did not stop in Bohol even amidst the pandemic. Production of kaang or flower pots increased. Unique pottery distribution mechanisms such as tabuan or market day selling, suroy-suroy or itinerant selling, and bailoan decline or are declining even before the pandemic. Due to COVID-19, the Boholano potters prefer the following marketing techniques: new and regular customer ordering in advance, kumprahan, and delivering their wares. These mechanisms are safer and lessen the risk of contracting the virus. Before I end, I would like to thank the Office of the Chancellor of the University of Philippines Diliman through the Office of the Vice Chancellor for Research and Development for funding support through outright research grant. Marami pong salamat.
All right, thank you very much, Sir Raydan, for that very prompt and very rich data research. And yeah, without further ado, let's proceed to the last speaker for today's session. He is Mr. John Paul J. Pretola. He is an associate member of the National Research Council of the Philippines. He is a graduate of AB Philosophy from University of San Agustin, Iloilo City. He holds a master's degree in education, major in administration and supervision from the University of Iloilo, FINMA, Iloilo City, and master's in philosophy from Silliman University, Dumaguete City. He is the current program coordinator in philosophy in the College of Liberal Arts, Sciences, and Education, and coordinator of the Villanova Institute for Social and Economics Research, Office of Research and Global Relations in the University of San Agustin. As a research faculty for USA's Center of Heritage and Indigenous Cultures, he is interested in topics on indigenous people, studies particularly the struggles of the Ati in Panay, ethnography, critical theory of light ethics, and phenomenology. He presented papers in various conferences, both in national and international, and published research findings in peer-reviewed journals. So let's welcome Mr. John Paul Pretola.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for the opportunity to present in this conference. This presentation is entitled Kabuhi sa mga Ati sa tunga sa pandemya dulot sa COVID-19. This is actually a product of my engagement with the Ati people during the pandemic. So before anything else, I'd like to introduce to you the Ati people. That they're considered the earliest ancestors of Panay. So they usually, in short, in height and the lean body belt. They have kinky hair, which is mostly seen in women, oily dark chocolate brown skin, broad noses, and round dark eyes. So these are the Ati community. So where are they located? So usually, the Ati people settled in the mountain areas of Panay. Their houses are made of light materials gathered from the forest. And they engage in farming and kaingin as their main source of livelihood. And they rely on the forest, the natural resources for their food, shelter, medicines, and other necessities. So in the Panay Island, so in Aklan, there are, this is the map of Panay Island. So you have Aklan, Capiz, Iloilo, Antique, and Iloilo City. In Aklan, there are 9 communities there. In Capiz, there are 3 communities. In Iloilo, there are also 10 communities scattered in different towns. In Antique, we have 25 communities also scattered in various towns in Antique, especially in the mountainous areas of Antique. In Iloilo City, which is the locale of my study, is actually located in Lanit, Haro, Iloilo City. So this is a unique community because this is the only Ati community in the city. So the life of Ati in the midst of pandemic. This paper attempts to provide a picture that depicts the lived experiences and the social conditions of Ati people in Lanit, Haro, Iloilo City, as they are vulnerable to the impacts of COVID-19. Specifically, their livelihood are affected, the practice of customs and traditions are also affected, education is also affected, as well as their health conditions. So this is the picture of the garden in Lanit, Haro, Iloilo City, and this is the sample of a picture of their houses in Lanit, Haro. One of the major themes that we have seen during the pandemic are the government indifferences because of the inadequate delivery of basic social services. The Ati people in Haro, Iloilo City are living in poverty. They don't have actually electricity. They have to work. They have to work hard for them to survive for their daily for their family every day. So this is also in consideration of the implementation of health and safety protocols is also one of the reasons why I say it's government indifferences. This is a picture of baby RG. This is not in Ati community in Lanit, but this is in Malaya clan. This is a picture of a 4-year-old Ati who was diagnosed with congenital heart disease and unfortunately died at the height of the lockdown in Aklan. One of the reasons why he was not able to have a medical uh, checkups, or shall we say medical attention, is that there's a problem in transportation going to Calibo Island, or going to hospital in Calibo. So they were not given ambulance. They were supported with ambulance during the time that he was suffering from his complications. So this is also a picture of men carrying the body of baby RJ. They have not provided the proper burial rites for baby RJ because of the pandemic. So they walk for 3 to 5 kilometers just to bury their dead. And as what I've said, only men went there, and the family, most of the family did not went there because of the health and safety protocols observed in Malay Aklan. Another theme that we have seen is the gaps in education. Of course, Aki people are the educational system right now, or the learning modality right now is more on the modular, especially in public schools. So due to modular learning modality, teaching learning are not fully facilitated in the Ati community. Because, of course, for the reason that most of Ati parents are not literate. They're not graduate of any course. They're not graduate of even high school or even elementary. So how could they teach their children? How could they facilitate learning to their children when they themselves do not know what they will teach to their children? Another problem that we saw is that the unreliable source of income. Of course, the Ati people are no work, no pay. If they don't work for today, then they don't have they have nothing for their family. So because of the lockdowns, the Ati people are hampered to work in construction sites and other workplaces, such as being a household helper, labandera, or helping in other manufacturers, or shall we say construction sites. So they, because of the pandemic, and of course because of the rise in the transportation costs, so they could not anymore afford of going to work. However, this solely depends on the income, especially when they're gardening projects sponsored by the APEC. So they have a garden there. Thank God that they have the garden, and then they use this income. They use to sell their products, and that becomes the income of the community. So this is a harvest time, and this is also they are trying to prepare their land for their fish pond. Okay. What we did during the pandemic, since we have seen this problem, of course, as researchers, we're not just relying on getting data from our respondents, but also we have this spirit of community service. So we had a food run during the lockdown. We, with the help of NGOs and other donors, we have facilitated 10 weeks food run in Ati community in Lanit Haro, Iloilo City. So starting from the last week of March up to first week of June, we initiated food run for the Ati people in the Lanit community. This was featured in Bombo Radio Iloilo through their Facebook page. So giving of health kits. So we also understand the problem of health, in terms of health problems and hygiene as well in the Ati community. So together with the NCIP6, we have provided face masks, face shields, and alcohol in Ati community in Lanetharo, Iloilo City. We understand how important for them to be safe, especially this pandemic. No, they are getting sick even though there is no pandemic, because actually, based on the record, many of them last year died because of tuberculosis and some common colds. So much more that they're vulnerable to this health risk, especially this pandemic of COVID-19. We also provided, with the help of other organizations, the assistance to learning. There are an organization who donated the computer sets. Okay, of course, through the help of their Chut Chut Teg Anaros Foundation Integrated School in Lanetharo, Iloilo City. This is the elementary school, the public elementary school located in Lanetharo, Iloilo. So the teachers really made them time available to teach these children, their Ati children, in their community. So they really did a good job in facilitating learning to the Ati children. Also, There are learning materials and online modules from stakeholders. So if you have seen, the ATI children are using laptops, are using computer sets, and the teachers are helping the ATI child, ATI student, doing her module. Okay. So we also facilitated this Paghinun-Anon. Of course, this is a series of dialogue with NCIP and ATI community leaders. This is in order to hear and address the various concerns of the community during pandemic. This is the time that the government or the ATI people needs the government. This is the time also that the ATI people need stakeholders to help them survive this pandemic, because they are poor even without pandemic. How much more that they are that we are in a pandemic? They are prone to health and environmental risk during pandemic, or shall we say, even without the pandemic, how much more that uh, in time of COVID-19. So that's why we initiated this Paghinun-Anon. So the Ati community in Lanitaro, Iloilo City is a unique cultural community because, as what I've said, this is the only community, the only Ati community in the city of Iloilo. So usually the community composed of various members of different tribes from Aklan, from Antique, from Iloilo province, and even from Capiz. So this is actually a merging of various members of different Ati groups in Panay. Uh, the Ati people are vulnerable to health environmental risks, especially to COVID-19. So they are very vulnerable. Many Ati workers were jobless due to pandemic. And Ati has to work because of this. Ati has to work hard in their everyday in order to survive their daily needs, especially of their family. The, During the pandemic, the Ati community rely on the help coming from local government, NGOs, in terms of livelihood, education, food and health, and medical assistance. So if you notice, in the previous slides, in the earlier slides that I presented, the Ati people are reliant on the natural resources, on the things they gather from their environment, from their forest, or shall we say from their surroundings. But now they rely on the help from the government. They rely on the help from the NGOs instead of having it their own way of surviving. So for this reason, I recommend that the local government units of and non-government organizations need to look after the needs and well-being of the Ati communities in their localities, particularly in times of pandemic. We understand in our history that the Ati people are nomadic. They used to travel from one place in the other, but now they are hampered to go to one place to another to look for food, to look for their for livelihood. No, so we encourage government officials or government organizations or even NGOs to look also not just the health, the physical health of the Ati people, but also their mental health. How are they now? How are they now during this pandemic? Because Lanit Haro, I think there are 2 times na nag-surgical lockdown because there is a positive case. And the Ati people are in one community, with 124 population in one community, which is a very, very close community. And isa lang yung may COVID-19 doon. It's very difficult for this 124 really to live every day because of the incident. So thank God that until now, the Ati community is safe. But of course, we are trying to ask for more help from the local government organizations and of course the NGOs to look after the needs and the well-being of the Ati people in their localities. So I'd like to thank, of course, the University of San Agustin, the Office of Research and Global Relations, together with the Center for Heritage and Indigenous Cultures. And this study is partially funded by the National Commission for Culture in the Arts. So this is actually a challenge for us to do IP studies amidst the pandemic because of course, COVID-19, because of the health protocols. But this is the right time. I think that we have to look after our IPs, their social conditions, the issues that they're facing right now, because this is the right time for us really to look after their welfare. And also, would like to thank the Ati community in Lanitharo, headed by Pastor Rogelio Lucendo, of course, Professor Rowena Isidro, Reef Wanderers, Iloilo City, Director Maglonsod of NCIP 6, Mr. Raymond Tolentino, the principal of the public elementary school in Lanithara, Iloilo City. So that's all. Thank you very much and good afternoon. Sir Romeo, nakamute po kayo.
Hi, thank you. Thank you very much, Sir Jen Paul. Now we will start our open forum, which I believe you've already started in the chat room. So yeah, let's. For those who have questions or any of the speaker, please leave a message there in the chat room, and we just gonna take them one by one, and then. Sino na una dito? From Jesse Marquez of La Salle University. This is a question for Professor Ryan. And why do you think this is? Why do you think it is still uses simple technology as described? I believe you have already provided an answer in the chat room, but for the benefit of everyone, could you please reiterate the response you have to Sir
I'm
Jesse?
sorry, what was the question?
Something to do with why do you think that the pottery in Bohol still uses simple technology as you described in your presentation?
I define simple as meaning they do not use a potter's wheel and they do not use skill in firing their potteries. Kasi po, sa Cebu, ayan, nasa Cebu kayo, meron ding community dyan na gumagawa ng pottery pero may gamit na silang pugon or kiln. So yun po yung definition ko ng simple at traditional. Kamay lang at saka wala pong kiln na ginagamit sa pag-fire ng pottery nila. Okay, ano pa po yung ibang tanong?
Yeah, and,
marami-rami.
In the same thread, he also have a second question is about the livelihood profile of Bulanon potters. Are they full-time potters? If not, how does pottery figure out their livelihood?
90% of them. It's a full-time specialization. So they make pottery, especially during summer season, kasi yun yung mabili. Kasi mabili daw sa fiesta at saka kapag tag-init. That's why they stockpile when it's dry and it's not raining. So nag-stockpile na sila para kapag tag-ulan, meron pa rin silang ibibentang iba. Majority of them are full-time specialists.
And tiloko na lang ako ng pangutan na Jesse. His last question is, can you talk more about ethnoarchaeology of pottery in Bohol? When did it start? What it changed through time? Maybe some earlier questions will be addressed by this. Salamat.
Okay po. Yung po kasing study ko, let me give you a background. My study is I'm supposed to do petrographic analysis of archaeological pottery of Plaza Independencia of Cebu and then compare it with ethnographic pots of Cebu and Bohol to look at the source of the Spanish and pre-Spanish pottery excavated in Plaza Independencia. So parang ito po yung year 1 nung aking dissertation. So I did an ethnoarchaeological study in Bohol. So yung pong main concern ko is the raw materials. No, kasi po I wanna see if the raw materials are local or are they being imported from other places or are they being mined. There is a theory or hypothesis in archaeology na supposedly for pottery making, especially for raw materials, the raw materials are normally mined nearby. Para pong ganon. So anyways, yung susunod niya pong tanong, yung po kasing pottery making sa Bohol, I think meron po taga National Museum of Bohol dito. I think alam nila to na matagal na po yung pottery making sa Bohol kasi po marami pong na mga nahanap na mga palayok, matatandang palayok sa mga kuweba sa Anda, kuweba sa Kandihay, no? At most likely these are from Metal Ages. No? And then if you talk to the current potter, present day potters, what they normally know is that yung 3 generation, 4 generation, ang most ko na na-check ay 5 generation. Alam nilang yung lola, nung lola, nasan na ako? Yung lola, nung lola, ay potters din kamukha nila. And actually, makikita nyo po ito, yung pottery making sa kanila ay personal, pamilya at community identity siya. Kasi po, lahat ng mga barangay na to, kung titignan niyo yung emblem nila, tsaka yung mga signages nila, laging may palayok or banga na nandun sa mga emblems nila. So this particular crop production is not just an economic activity. I think it also entails yung cultural identity rin po nila.
Okay, thank you very much, Sir Raynan.
Ryan.
Sir Ryan. Sorry, kapila na ni. Anyway, I think this question is for Sir Ike Oracion. This is from BB Monkey. And she says that in a long chat here, she said that she's a churchgoer too, although a Protestant, and she's interested to know about the views of holiness. So let me just read verbatimly her question. Can we elaborate more on the elders' coping mechanism? How are our elders coping with the quarantine restrictions there in Cebu? Knowing that Cebu is such a Sagrado, Cristiano, or Catholico region. And then to continue, how do they adapt the shift to the online worship? Are they violent reactions or resistance among elders? How receptive are they? Sir Ike.
Yeah, of course, the study was not in Cebu. It's in Dumaguete, Negros Oriental, but still the same. The restrictions, of course, is not from the church. It's from the government. No, and therefore the church simply implement what is required by the government, or else is the church that's going to be penalized. Certainly, the church would like to protect the elderly because data shows that the elderly are the most vulnerable among the population. At first, there was a strong resistance, but eventually, when the church explained the reason why it's going to be like that, then somehow it's sobered down. But then the church also provide ways, like for example, it becomes online or broadcasted over radio, no? So Facebook and then over radio. Simultaneous na siya. There's a particular schedule, 6 a.m. and 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. But then what's very important in the Mass actually is the Holy Communion. Now, the Holy Communion could be provided by the church through the lay ministers if the older people would request for it. So I think there's no problem actually. It's only that the traditional has been replaced, but that is basic also for survival. I mean, if you know that you are vulnerable, why would you risk yourself when in fact the church is already providing those options, virtual or physical for those who are able. By the way, at First Manggod, it's up to 60 years old. Karon extended na to 65, so more or less opened. But then I was saying it's very ironic because at the time that there's still new cases nahimong ECQ, then later on worse na ang case, nag-MGCQ na. But of course, that's a debate between economics and health, no? So I think there's no violent resistance. It's just a simple, the usual for us who are senior, because I'm a senior citizen already also, that we express, no, why should we not be allowed to go to church? But then if you understand already, we are vulnerable, then it's okay, no? So I think that's the whole thing. So it's both adaptation by the church and adaptation by the devout Catholics. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Sir Ike. There's another question for you, and also for Sir Guadalquivir. So let's just continue the thread for religiosity. The question is, what are the major effects of COVID-19 restrictions on people's religiosity beyond the participation of rituals? So who would like to go first?
Would you like to go first, Sir Roshan, Sir Ike?
Yeah, I mean, I'll focus on what is requirement to be a Catholic, no? But of course, it's not only true to Catholics, Christian in general. Faith and charity are two very important things. One, ang faith, you do what is required by the church, all the sacraments that you have to observe them. But then given the restrictions, there are options being provided. So that's it. It may not affect the religiosity because anyway, you can pray anywhere. The Lord would understand given the circumstances. Now, charity, we have so many people now needing help. And that's one way also where the Catholics could express their faith, no? So kanang faith without faith and charity, that means if you believe in God, you love God, and God said, love your brethren, so you help. And in fact, in one slide I was showing, by staying at home, you're actually uh, prophesying charity because you are compassionate to the health risk or to the health condition of other people. But then the church itself, dili man siya open nga, there's no alternative. There's an option. There's an option. I hope I answered that one. So same ra katong kang Sir Neil ganina nga there's the desire, but then the desire is curtailed by the circumstances. So what should prevail? Perhaps God would be angry also. I told you already. I showed you signs that it's going to be risky, and you have the options. But I think Sir Neil could provide more context.
Thank you, Sir Ike. I would agree with the explanation of Sir Ike that regarding faith and charity, because also when in terms of the effects, there's not much effect on the religiosity because we are taught to find ways in to practice and of course to pray and to practice our faith. Of course, we have for elderly there's the option to listen to the radio or to watch live streaming of the masses and other activities. And for also based on my experience here in where I am located, the good thing is we have a young assistant parish priest that who loves technology, and every time he says mass, he live streams or he posts it in Facebook so that other parishioners can also avail. So I think that's the effect there is that from physical expression of religiosity, it has now become a virtual expression of religiosity. That's it.
But could I add on that, Ming? Because there's a question. I was wondering if your study was able to identify some changes in their way of expressing faith. The way of expressing faith is based also per advice sa church. Like for example, what I said about fiesta, what I said about All Souls Day. If you're going to examine the context, naman siya animistic nga origin or resemblance. But then the church always provide, no? Like for example, temporary closure of the cemetery. The church provided a place, a common ground where they could light candles and pray for the departed. So that's one way. So it's the church telling them what to do, and the church explain. You cannot receive the sacrament physically, but you can receive it spiritually. There's a prayer after the Holy Communion. And then the elderly, for example, or anyone who can go to church could request for a lay minister to do the giving the communion at that particular time. So whatever the parishioners are doing, it's always within the requirement or what is advised by the church. So there's no deviation, no. That's why I was saying I think it's still normal in terms of faith and charity, but abnormal in terms of the situation of how this is being expressed now. But the essence of being faithful to God and doing what God requires us as Catholic or Christians, like helping others, it's so abundant at this time of the pandemic, and God would be happy about it.
All right, thank you very much, Sir Ike and Sir Neil. Let's also hear from Sir Pretola. Here's a question also from Mamzona Amper. Considering that the Ati people are known to be traditionally knowledgeable about ethnomedicine, what local health practices have they utilized to counter the pandemic? What can be done to revitalize the ethnomedicinal knowledge and practices instead of merely relying on external assistance?
Yes, thank you for the question, Doc Amper. No? So actually, the Ati people also still practicing this traditional way of like for example, yung hilot, also the use of herbal medicine, herbal plants. They use the balanyos. No? They still do that. They also use apog or bunga when they treat the symptoms, especially those nga may mga flu, sakit ng tiyan. So those usually are symptoms also of COVID-19. So they still do that. However, because of the scarcity of ingredients doon sa kanilang community, because they're living in a city community and the area is a very small area, and then they have the difficulty of traveling to their provinces. No, they have the difficulty of traveling to Malay or even to Iloilo province, where the Barotac Viejo, for example, where they could get herbal medicines as their ingredients. So actually nga, kahit yung nganga nila, no, yung pagnganga, they have difficulty of getting the ingredients because they don't have the resources of going to their communities. So that's one of the reason also that we're talking with the NCIP on how are we going to help these people still living as if in a normal way, like for example, because the NCIP actually know the I hope that they had really a gross knowledge on the indigenous culture of these Ati communities, no. So that's why we asked the help of NCIP to at least middle on the needs, especially on the herbal needs, because we know that Ati could survive the pandemic with their own indigenous knowledge. However, because of the scarce resources that they have right now in their community, that is a bit a problem for us. But we hopefully together with the NCIP and the local government could also help us flourishing this indigenous knowledge, and maybe Ati people could help us also, could provide us their ethnomedical knowledge or ethnomedicinal knowledge on how to conquer, like for example yung mga simpleng balanyos nila, maybe it could help us. Yung mga tuob-tuob nila, kung minsan yung kamanga nila could help us. So however, because only of the scarce resources, that's the only problem. But if given the time, the resources, and the facility would have to get these resources, I think, in their municipalities or in their places, then they could still practice this one. They could conquer their pandemic among themselves.
Right. Thank you, Sir Pertola. We have two questions here for Sir Ryan Melendres, finally. And then, I'll just first read to you the question from Baby Monkey. She said, she or she said, how about also about the pottery in Bohol? So they make pottery primarily for economic reasons. How about its religious significance? Do they still consider the craft and its creation as spiritual experience, or go beyond oneself, kind of creative pursuit, or just plainly economic, or both?
It's mainly economic, but part of it is pride, because they're very proud that they're they still have this kind of tradition. That's why, like I mentioned, it's part of their identity, familial and community identity. It's part of their emblem. Tapos, what's the other question? But it's mainly economic, really. It is really economic.
The question
nabanggit about spirituals. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. There's also another question from Dr. Zona Amper. Sir Melendres, how can the younger generation be more motivated to be interested in and hone their skills in pottery making? I noticed that it is the older generations engaged in the livelihood. As you mentioned, some children started making flower pots because they are now at home because of the pandemic.
Actually, very simple answer. Make it financially appealing. Kasi nga po, I have an upcoming article to be published in Taiwan. In one of the pottery communities in Bohol, wala nang bata. And then I interviewed the children of the current potters. And then if you look at the responses, it's really because it's not financially appealing. And now kasi dahil because of the quarantine and of the pandemic, yung pagtatanim ng halaman became a hobby of a lot of Filipinos, a lot of Bocolanos. Kaya nga parang nag-boom siya. As a matter of fact, in Calape, no, may additional 10 household na biglang gumawa ng mga kaang kasi nga mabenta siya, it's financially appealing. So I think kailangan ng maging financially appealing plus a little government subsidy kasi nga they need a little puhunan. They need a little puhunan because they buy clay, they need to buy some of the raw materials eh. Hindi po kasi libre yung iba nilang mga raw materials na hindi ko diniscuss sa presentation na to. So make it financially appealing, government subsidy. And there's another thing pala, in Valencia, Bohol, they even came up with a festival just for pottery making. They call it the Kajanangan Festival. And it's a fantastic project kasi nga, yun po, they celebrate yung kanilang pottery making tradition sa lugar na yun.
Right. Thank you very much, Sir Ryan. 2 questions for Sir Ike. Here's one from Facebook Live from Al Pineda. When it comes to religiosity, how did it affect the burial practices of the people in Dumaguete, according to your observations?
I did not observe about the burial practices because I was focusing more on the rituals inside the church because that's where the what you call that one, where we have the restriction. But in terms of burial, per my observation, the usual. Right now, if you're COVID positive, if there is an indication or even a suspect that you're COVID positive, immediately the person is being buried. So no more vigil, and it has implication, and that's one good area of study also because it has prevented relatives to come together. I have several relatives who died, but I could not travel because of the lockdown. I could not go to that particular place because of the fear of crowding. Before we were not fearful about being in a crowd, but right now it is. So I would agree with that. There's a change in our burial practices because of all these health protocols. That's correct. And I think that's one good area to also investigate in anthropology because in my study was focusing more on the church. But with regards to sa cemetery, because it was done by the church, instead of having the blessings sa cemetery or letting people go to the cemetery, they were rather brought to the church in front of the church and have the big cross. Usually in Catholic cemetery, that's what we call dakong cross, where we light candles. Now the dakong cross is brought in front of the church, and that's what I said that the church also explained or justify what it is doing, so people would understand. It does not change the meaning whether you go to the cemetery or you go to this particular place because that's being sanctioned by or authorized by the church. But that one, that particular, I could have elaborated that more, but I have a general observation also only that the vigil had been stopped, burying is immediate. People feared in going to this and to condole families or friends. So I have a friend who wrote about it that dying now is so difficult for those who died. I think so. But it's actually difficult for those who are living because no one would console them. That's one thing. So when anyone would like to study about it, that practice on burial, that's a very good area to study. You participate in all the vigils if you would like. Participant observation. But anyway, I hope I give a very general picture. Indeed, it has changed our burial practices. Thank you for that question.
Okay, thank you, Sir. I find it funny. Burial, and then participant observation. Anyway, yeah, there's also another question for you, Sir Ike, from Christine Cordenilio. Sir, with this interruption in the faith expression due to the pandemic, I was wondering if your study was able to identify some changes in their way of expressing faith, which is deemed to last even after the pandemic.
Uh, yeah, I think I partly answered that, but I'd like to answer that question about after the pandemic. What I like now about our worship, there is no crowding. People who would like to be first to receive the communion. There is order now, and I like it. That makes the celebration more holy. I don't know about the rest, if you have observed that also. Right now, for those who have, the capacity is limited. Everyone is sitting, no standing, no roaming around because that is not allowed. And then receiving the Holy Communion by rows, I think that makes the celebration more holy. And I hope, I hope that it would continue even after the pandemic. Yeah, I think that's one thing I observed. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sir Ike. I think we have 7 minutes, roughly 7 minutes more. There's another question. I think we can entertain two more, and after this, from Sir Romeo Ditaro, tanong ko lang kang Sir Pretola, sustainable din po ba ang relocation ng ATI sa Lanit?
All right. So good afternoon. Actually, first meron akong side comment doon kay Sir Ike. Actually, Sir Ike, napakaluwag doon sa loob. Dito kasi sa Haro Cathedral, may isang picture, napakaluwag sa loob, pero sa labas naman jump pack yung tao kasi naghihintay ng schedule. So, medyo mahirap i-observe yung physical distancing sa labas. And also, I think Sir Neil could connect with me if you could make a paper on the phenomenology of death in COVID-19 or during COVID-19, di ba, Sir Neil? Sa philosophy week, the phenomenology of death in COVID-19 kasi mahirap mamatay ngayon eh. Mahirap for the family also. Well, I personally experienced na mamatayan ng relative din, which we cannot go there. And then he was buried actually 12 hours after he died. So, yon yung problema. To the question of Professor Ditaro, if you notice, sir, ito yung mga ati na to na nilagay nila sa relocation sa ati village in Lanit. These are the people na naghihingi-hingi before sa Iloilo City. Ito yung nagwa-wander, naghihingi-hingi sila, nanglilimos. And most of them are actually rugby boys. So, what the NGO have, rugby boys, kasi sa city sila nagsistay. They are from La Paz before. They used to just these people are also, some of them are snatchers during the time. So with the international merong international organization or international church na ginather sila into one area. So they bought the land for the ati. They asked the help of the government doon sa mga bahay na pinatayo na kanila. So actually talaga kung titingnan natin, it's not sustainable. So that's why we are trying to help as researchers also, nakapitbahay din namin dito sa Haro. We are helping them to make their lives sustainable or to make their living sustainable. So far, some NGOs are helping them, like for example yung kanilang paglalagay ng mga kanal because minsan nababaha dito sa kanila. Also, the APEC is helping them with regards to this gardening project. So may mga tanim sila. Some merong loob organizations are also helping them na nagwi-weave sila ng mga gumagawa ng bags. So mga out of the recyclable materials, out of the grasses that they gathered from, I do not know what kind of grass is that. So these are some of the activities that the NGOs are doing to make their ati community sustainable. Kasi mahirap kasi pag uwi nila doon sa kanilang provinces, some of them do not have anymore the land. Kasi nga, nabenta na, nabili na, or they were already displaced. This actually displaced ati. These are displaced ati. So, good thing that now, even though it's pandemic, there are a lot of people helping them, their community, to make it sustainable and to make them survive and to help them survive. So as to the sustainability, for now, it is going into that level of sustainability. So yun, but we really need help for them. Kasi aside sa meron silang problema in terms of poverty, meron din silang problema in terms of vices, yung kasi nga mga rugby boys ito. So we need really rehabilitation for them. So yun.
Mio.
Right. Yes, sir.
Just a rejoinder to what was said by GP about crowding outside. That's bad because I think the church is not fenced. In the church where I did the study, is fenced siya, dalawa ang may main gate at saka yung church. So no one. But church that are sa diocesan, usually it's open. That's where the problem is. But for church na missionary, yung mga religious, enclosed siya.
Yes.
Incidentally, I was doing it in a religious na group.
All right.
Okay. Right. Thank you very much. It's roughly 3 minutes before the next session, and I'm still seeing questions here. Unfortunately, we don't have the luxury of time to entertain all of them. For the rest of the audience who still have questions for our dear speakers, you may ask them personally, and I believe they can give you more profound answers. So let's kind of wrap this up. The first speaker, Sir Ike Russian, gave a very quick, very brief retrospect of Filipino spirituality from the animistic roots to Islam to Catholicism and the fusion of this indigenous spirituality and Christian theology. And COVID-19 has affected all of these spiritual experiences, such as the prohibition of mass gatherings, and due to these limitations, and things are going online, and some of them are going into secret masses. The second speaker, also on the same thread for spirituality, he interviewed his students celebrating religious and cultural festivals such as the Sinulog, the Ati-Atihan, and the Dinagyan. And he reiterated in his research that his students felt a sense of emptiness when now they cannot celebrate these festivals the same way as before. The third speaker, in the economic branch of this panel, he presented the rich pool of ethnographic and archaeological data about the pottery industry in Bohol, from the production and distribution. And the most interesting thing here is the barter system. And even more remarkable, the effect of the COVID pandemic is the burgeoning demand of flower pots due to the plantito and plantita wave. And lastly, for the fourth speaker, he presented the story of marginalization of the Ati community brought by the unreliable source of revenue, government indifference, and other factors. And the pandemic intensified all these sufferings. And in response, the University of San Agustin and other allied institutions have conducted initiatives such as food run, provisions of medicine kits, and assisted learning. All of the speakers have thought about the economics and spirituality. And one thing is for sure, the COVID pandemic has really shaken up and affected the way we protect what is important in our life, and also in anthropology of encounters. The virus has affected the way we encounter the divine. So that's all for us. And I just remind everyone to please fill out the evaluation form, and please invite other participants to become member. For everyone who is interested to be a member of GUT, we have links here for you to be available. Thank you very much for coming today, and see you for the next sessions. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Myung.
Thank you.
Thank you, JP, Neil, and Ryan.
Thank you.
Nice presenting together with you.
Thank you, Sir Romeo.
Okay.
Salamat.
Thank you.
God bless. Keep safe.
God bless. Pasensya ka na, God bless. Joke lang.